I've spoken to a number of people in the past who are involved in the build-to-rent sector, and today is an opportunity to get under the skin a little bit more. I'm going to be talking to Rachel Brooking. Thank you for joining us. You've been involved in build-to-rent for a long time. Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester, London, is that right?
Yeah, I've been in the sector for over 10 years now.
And also involved with Propertymark.
I am indeed.
Tell me how did you first get involved in the build-to-rent sector?
It's quite funny, actually. We always say in the property industry that no one actually goes to school and wants to become a letting agent or an estate agent unless you kind of go through the surveying route. So I'm very atypical that I started my career off in travel and tourism, mainly overseas, and that was pretty much half of my career. And then I came back to the UK circa 2003. I saw an advert in the Hotel and Caterer magazine from a property company wanting someone with very customer-centric skills, sales skills, to come in and look at how we could deliver a different way of letting commercial properties within a big landed estate in central London. And that's how I fell into it. And I went from working for a landed estate to high street letting agency, and then after a few years into the build-to-rent industry.
How long's the build-to-rent industry been kind of up and running?
There's a lot of people that claim that they are the founder of Build to Rent, but if you look at the buildings that are operational at the moment, 9-10 years is where the first schemes started to be delivered into the UK market.
And it seems to be speeding up all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, we're as quarter 3 2024, 120,000 homes that have been delivered. We have got 50,000 in construction, and there's over another 100,000 that are in the planning system.
Okay, so it's doubling up.
Yeah, and I'm constantly hearing, investors looking to get into the market.
There's a lot of chat about it, which is why I'm keen to talk to you, and our audience are interested in learning more about it, because I think there's quite a few misconceptions, but we'll get into that in a minute. And how do you get involved with Propertymark?
I was working for a high street letting agents, and I actually started to volunteer for Propertymark, and again, this is probably 11 years ago.
Okay.
And I have been with them from being a regional executive up to now where I am as an advisory panel member, and I work with the presidential team and the main board, kind of advising them. So for me, this is an absolutely brilliant opportunity because there is very much parallels. The build to rent sector is part of the private rental sector, and Propertymark is, by far the most successful membership body in the private rental sector. And so whilst build to rent operations are slightly different, what we find is there's synergies. And so what I can do is I can bring to Propertymark some of the problems or some of the challenges that we have operating build to rent. Okay. And so what we're creating there is an organisation that is looking at the whole sector, not just the kind of high street agent.
And am I right thinking that Apo Group are London, Liverpool and Birmingham?
So Apo Group, who I am managing director for, is a third-party managing agent. And what we do is on behalf of clients, normally institutional clients, pension funds, we will manage their developments, their blocks of build to rent. So Liverpool, we have about 400 units. I have a scheme in Kew Bridge that is 500 units, in Barking 600 units, in Hayes 100 units, okay. And Birmingham about 400 units. And it's
all occupied?
All occupied, very busy, and we do block management, facilities management, health and safety, building safety, lettings, property management, and all those, customer aspects, the service.
And can you give me an example of a kind of typical lease option, or what options are there for renters?
Again, I think that's really exciting in build to rent because it's evolved. When we were first starting off in the industry, it was like 3-year leases, 5-year leases, long term, because these assets are for holding.
Yes.
It's not an individual accidental landlord that might in a year's time say, no, I'm going to sell that because I'm moving out of London, I'm buying a house.
So it's the security that you're offering. I think that's really attractive.
Yeah, it is attractive because especially people, potentially, young couples who are moving in to save up to get on the house ladder for the first time. They know that in a year's time, they're not going to be told, well, I'm selling, move out. They can set a long-term plan. But flexibility is really big in build to rent. You can get a 6-month tenancy, an 8-month, a 9-month, a 10-month, 12-month, 3-year. And I think also what's nice is as we're dealing with a block, and a lot of the blocks that my teams manage, if someone's in a 1-bed and they want to move to a 2-bed, we can do it really easily.
If somebody was to ask you for a 3-year lease, would they get a better deal than somebody who wanted a 6-month lease?
It's a really good question, because there's a lot of talk and chatter about dynamic pricing in the industry at the moment, whereas, why do we just have a one price fits all? So if you want a shorter tenancy, that could be a little bit more of a premium. But if you are wanting to commit longer term, then, is there going to be a benefit of that? I think that some of the challenges is that we are led by the market and the rent increases, because again, these assets are a business to an extent, and long-term tenancies are by far a cheaper option.
But if somebody, let's go back to your concept, somebody's in a 1-bed flat, they haven't reached the end of their lease, but they actually want to, they've got married or they have a baby or something, and they want to move to a 2-bed. Can you accommodate that?
Absolutely, and that's something that we do month in, month out. And I think that's really attractive of build to rent, because we have got that ability, because we have so many units to be able to chop and change.
Some people feel that build to rent is quite a premium product, it's quite expensive. As an operator, how do you ensure affordability or value for money?
I'm involved a lot at the viability stage. So when an owner or a developer is looking at how much it's going to cost to build and operate a scheme, and we do exactly the same process of pricing up. And what we do is we look at what the local market rents are, and then we also have a look at what we're going to give to residents. A gymnasium, well, how much is a gym membership per month? We are going to have fibre blown into the building and to the apartment, so you've got super fast Wi-Fi to every single apartment. We're going to be putting in work from home spaces, which is the cost of a membership to one of the serviced offices.
Like a communal
Absolutely.
space.
We're going to be doing parcel lockers, and actually all of those elements have got a financial value. And so if you do look at build to rent, and I would say have a look at what a local 2-bed is, look at what you'd pay for a gym, this, you will find probably just an extra premium for the fact that we've got on-site staff and the convenience. But I think we are competitive.
The amenities and the services in build to rent are quite aligned to the hospitality sector and hotels and that kind of thing, aren't they? Who are they being designed for?
So build to rent, as it's known in the UK, over in the States it's called multifamily, and I think that's quite a clever name, because it kind of gives you more of a definition of what we're trying to achieve. In build to rent, it's designed for everyone: sharers, students, young couples, families. And a lot of this is also when we are getting planning permission for these developments, the council, we have a section 106, which is a promise that the developer will deliver for the council certain aspects. And so some of our schemes have got children's playgrounds, wide open spaces for people to be able to exercise, gymnasiums outside. We might have to contribute to local areas by creating new cycle routes. We have to contribute to local areas. And so what we're doing is we're attracting everyone. It's not just for young individuals. In Liverpool, we had a couple that sold their house, and they decided that they're going to come and rent because they don't want to have to replace their boiler or be worried that in the storms that their roof is going to blow off, because that's all covered. And it means that they can travel and change around. And in fact, actually, they moved from our Liverpool scheme after a few months down to our London scheme.
Okay. Do you get downsizers?
We do. I think that, again, especially in our central areas like our London, where a lot of people have kind of moved out, and then they're thinking, well, actually, there's not a lot going out in the country, so I think we'd like to sell the house, come to London. That's where their children are. They want to be closer to family, and they're going to be taking a unit with us. And I said we've got studios, 1-beds, 2-beds, 3-beds. The industry is brilliant like that.
I love the idea that you could move bigger or smaller within the same development really easily.
It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, obviously, if it's smaller, what we do ask is that we have the time to be able to find someone to replace you in the larger unit. But definitely, if you're upsizing, I said it happens a lot.
And people are, well, you've got full occupancy, so people are accepting that, yes, it might cost a little bit more, but you're getting an awful lot more. So it is kind of cash for goods and services.
Yeah, and I think it is very easy for people to try and compare it to the traditional rentals. But I think until you've gone into a build-to-rent scheme and you've actually seen all the extras that are on offer, on paper you would look and go, well, that's £1,700. I can get something for £1,400. But come inside, come and have a look. The value of not having my parcel stolen from my front door, which happens all the time, to actually going into a locker or going into a secure room.
So I've been into a couple, and I was very impressed. I was really quite blown away by the range of amenities and the smartness of the common parts. And there was a dining room and a kitchen you could use, and I think there was a cinema. Yeah,
we're on phase 2. We now have virtual golf driving ranges. The scheme in Birmingham that I've helped design, we've got a podcast room, so that because we've got a lot of young entrepreneurial influences in a lot of our properties, and having somewhere with equipment that they can do podcasts, music rooms. It's constantly evolving in build to rent, and at the moment we're not kind of blocking. We're thinking and looking at what the trends are and introducing that.
Interesting, really interesting times. There's always a lot of chat about in the standard private rental sector about costs and the transparency of costs, or lack of transparency of costs. You're not quite sure what you're paying for, what you're not paying for if you haven't read the small print. How transparent are your costs? Is it one cost, or are there different things that people have got to add up and consider?
So obviously, build to rent is part of the private rental sector. We issued assured short hold tenancies, and so we have to conform with legislation and compliance, the tenant fee bill, So yes, all our costs have to be transparent. I would say the difference is that in build to rent, there's additional options. So for instance, a lot of buildings have storage spaces. So rather than having to go to one of the big brands in industrial parks and rent, you could rent a storage space, and that costs extra. You can have a car park space, and that will cost extra. Some operators will charge you to hire out the cinema room per hour. But again, this is all very transparent through that journey of signing up with the build-to-rent operator.
Okay. So you're saying there's nothing that's hidden, there's nothing that's concealed. You choose what you want and what you don't want.
It's not quite unpackaging, because when, for instance, if I can use my apartments as example, you move in and you have your Wi-Fi included, you have access to the gyms included, you have the concierge services included. I'm not going to be charging you extra. And in most of our apartments, the furniture is also included.
Last year, you told us that if you knew a sale or letting agent was a qualified member of a professional body maintaining high industry standards, you would choose them over an agent who was not. Well, agents who are members of Propertymark are not only regulated, but qualified too. There are currently over 18,000 members right across the UK, all adhering to a strict code of conduct and membership rules. And that is why we at Move IQ endorse what they do. To find your local agent, look for Propertymark and let them know I sent you. You talked about the market is always evolving, and rightly so too, as it adapts to sort of as atmosphere and change of moods. What can we see in the years ahead, do you think, what's coming down the track?
Build to rent is going to grow bigger and bigger. I think that already we're hearing the sound bites from this new government that they are going to look at the planning system and how they can unlock stuff, because at the moment a lot of build to rent schemes are stuck in that planning stage. But if it is unleashed, then we have evolved and there is more entry-level accommodation that is coming in, which is defined as build-to-rent schemes that maybe haven't got all the glitz and the glamour, but they are functional and they can still offer that long-term security, but perhaps without the gyms.
Yeah.
You've got the mid-market. Then you have got the top-of-the-range market with the basketball courts on the roof, the swimming pools, the saunas. I think how we're evolving is that we are opening into more markets.
Yeah.
And again, it was very centric to city centres. But now build-to-rent is opening in areas outside of the city centres because of the natural spread and also with the change of working habits, people not having to commute into offices so much, so that they can say, well, I'm going to stay, I'm going to work from home 3 days a week.
Are there any, I always picture build to rent as a great big block of flats, apartments. Are there places outside of cities where there could be houses with gardens?
Absolutely. And it's called the single family housing. And that is exactly it. If you think about a huge housing development, normally you have the roundabout, you have the flags and you drive in and there's lots of houses. There might be some smaller parts. This is becoming huge. Again, this is another evolution of build to rent, is that maybe there are people that don't want to live in big blocks of flats, but they still want that security of, tenure, that they're not going to get kicked out.
This is really interesting because given the kind of atmosphere of today where landlords are exiting the market, traditional landlords, and buy-to-let is not the exciting investment that it once was, that's putting huge pressure on the private rented sector, and therefore the rents are rising, and that's really hard for the tenants. Do you think build to rent will be the natural beneficiary of that situation?
I think that we all know one of the biggest problems is we haven't got enough housing in the UK. We can't meet the targets year in, year out. And you have a sector in build to rent that can deliver housing very, very quickly, but it is stuck in planning. Land values have got shot up, construction costs have shot up, but build to rent can plug a massive gap because they're professionally managed. They're built with quality, with sustainability, the heat systems, the district heat networks they're connected to, the solar, the PV panels on the roofs, the monitoring of these buildings. It is a huge opportunity for build to rent to fill the gaps of these private landlords that are leaving the market because they are being discouraged by costs and regulation.
And then we've got renters reform and security of tenure. We've got to look after our renters better, which institutional investors and your world are doing very much so. That's kind of at the heart of what you're doing. Absolutely.
I mean, along with Propertymark, myself, the build-to-rent sector and some of the other stakeholders that represent the build-to-rent sector, we are fully for regulation of the industry. We are fully for reform, but sensibly. And we've seen what our colleagues in Scotland have happened. We've seen what our colleagues in Wales, and we've seen the impact that some of those changes. And also, you've got to remember that build-to-rent assets are investments. A lot of pension funds, my pension funds invest in build-to-rent. So, I have in my heart, I want it to be successful. But I think that we have to keep regulation and rental reform very, very sensible. Rent arrears is a big problem, and by extending, into 4 months rent arrears before you can start action, I think we do have to be very, very sensible with where we're going with all regulation.
I hear that, but at the same time, I know you're fully focused on customer experience and customer service, and it should be an experience.
Absolutely.
Living in a community.
Absolutely. I mean, just the other week, I sat down with some of my senior team members and we actually mapped out the customer journey, not from a customer service aspect, from a customer experience. And, from the moment that they get in contact with our business, how is it dealing with us? The move-in process, the move-out process, the maintenance process, making that quality of living. And it's about also kind of educating the UK market that renting is okay, because Germany, Europe, America,
it's standard.
It's standard.
Is the build to rent sector much larger in those countries?
Yes.
Much more established.
Yeah, I mean, in the States, multifamily is huge. Although I will say that in the 1930s in Balham, Duquesne Court was built, and it was built by one owner, and it had a restaurant and a dance floor on top, and it was all rented out. Okay. So we were doing build to rent years and years ago, but yeah, massively established in Europe and in the States.
So if I'm in a tenancy and my drain gets blocked and I'm dashing out to work, if I stop and say to the concierge or person on the lawn, my drain's blocked, can you sort it? I'm off to work.
Absolutely.
Will it genuinely be sorted by the time I get back?
Absolutely. You can even report it on your app. So we have a resident apps that you can download, and it's brilliant because it can talk 10 different languages as well. So if you natively you don't speak English, you can correspond in your own native language. So you could report it via the app, take a picture, it goes straight to the in-house maintenance team. Or, as you said, you're running out to work, you're going to catch the tube, the train, you're walking to work, you can say to the desk people, shower's blocked, can you send someone up? And you can come home and it will be fixed. Or you would have got a message saying, we can't fix it, we're doing something else. Okay. Whereas again, in that traditional kind of way of operating, you'd call your property manager, you'd wait for the landlord to approve the works, then you wait for the maintenance operative to come, you might have to stay home from work. So yeah, it's a lot more convenient build to rent.
If somebody listening or watching to this is thinking that this might be for them, what should they look out for in choosing a build to rent provider? What would be your advice?
Go and have a look. Look around at all the amenities. Sensibly think, what are you going to use? What is going to add value to your life? What do you need to make your life more enjoyable and convenient? And ask about any costs for renting additional items, and ask about who manages the property, if they have in-house maintenance. Just ask a few questions about the structure. Okay. Ask about if you want to move to a different apartment, can you move different locations? Just see and ask about the flexibility.
Okay. Any particular misconceptions that you'd like to clear up for people?
I think we've had a chat. As I said, a lot of people think it's really expensive, and I really encourage people to go and have a look at actually costing up the Wi-Fi, costing up the gym, costing up a night out with wine and cheese, because these are all the events and stuff that we throw in as part of that customer experience that wouldn't ordinarily cost money.
So it does cost more, but it's about value for money.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many added extras, and there's that element of convenience as well, of having your parcels looked after, having someone just on your doorstep to report something to.
For me, a lot of it is also about the security of tenure, and you're not going to be kicked out because the landlord's not going to sell. You're in.
And I think it's the way that society has gone. We're a subscription society. We like our meals to be delivered to our door, our shopping, our supermarket shopping delivered to our door. We will subscribe to a film because we don't want to go to a video shop anymore. Yeah. People are prepared to pay that premium to make life a lot easier.
Rachel, great talking to you. I think it's really exciting. Do you say there's 100,000 in existence and 100,000 being constructed?
There's 120 in existence, 50,000 in construction, and another 110,000 in planning.
Okay, it's going to keep you busy.
Yeah, hope so.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thanks.